Hello and welcome to episode 134 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devon Dundee. I'm joined by my co-host, Sigmund Judge. Sigmund, last week you told us that you've been spending more time with Time to Walk and getting out, just going for walks. So I was wondering if you have an update on that, on how it's going.
Yeah, my relationship with walking without a purpose is continuing. I've been closing a number of rings on my Apple Watch, and I've been listening to a lot of the Time to Walk sessions, but I've also been listening to a lot of music. Of course, the Oasis reunion was just announced today, so very, very excited for that, and podcasts. And I've been listening with my AirPods, and, it's crazy to think that we're nearly at September, which, we'll get into in this podcast in a little bit. But something always seems to happen around September. I'm not too sure if it's a thing where I get careless with my phone or what. But I was taking a walk on Bank Holiday Monday, and during that walk, I had my battery pack with me and my iPhone, and I had my AirPods Max on. And anyway, I'm walking along, and my battery pack cable kind of goes. I've got noise cancellation on, and I notice that it's loose. Doesn't occur to me that I might have dropped my iPhone. So I stuff the cable into my pocket, and I continue to walk. Of course, a couple of minutes pass, and the reception between my AirPods Max and my phone starts to fade, and I start to panic. Right, I'd just gone to get a bottle of water from the local shop. So very quickly, I run back to the shop and say, has anyone seen my phone? I've left it here. I had not left my iPhone in the shop when I got a bottle of water. Far worse, the phone had dropped out of my pocket and onto the road, a very, very busy road. So this week, my iPhone played a game of Crossy Road with the traffic, and when I saw my iPhone on the road, a car was going right towards it, and I thought, literally, my phone is about to get crushed. And it was maybe a thumb away from being crushed. I picked it up, along with the case, the MagSafe case, and it is next to no damage on it because I had a screen protector on it on the front. However, on the back, unfortunately, the wide camera on my 15 Pro Max has a crack in it on the glass. But the crazy thing about all of this is when I tested all of the cameras, they work fine and they're great. And this is a year where we talked earlier on in the year where I was either going to keep this phone for another year or use it as a camera, right, in my setup, and wouldn't be something that I just kind of sold on or passed down to a family member. So that is my story of my iPhone playing Crossy Road. Pretty scary stuff.
I know you're competitive when it comes to achievements and leaderboards on Apple Arcade, Sigmund, but I think this is taking it just a little bit too far. Okay, you're officially the winner of Crossy Road. You don't have to play it with your phone out in the real world anymore.
Yeah. Never, ever want to be in that position again. So, yeah. It's funny how these things happen just a couple of weeks before a potential iPhone launch.
Yeah, it's not like you want to get it repaired right now when you're just about to potentially upgrade. So it's interesting timing. On the ultra-wide camera, I'm curious, you said it works, but does it have some kind of effect because the lens is cracked?
No, I got super, super lucky. The glass that protects the lens is cracked, but it doesn't go all the way in. And the lens is completely unaffected. That looks a little bit janky. We'll have to see how that lasts over time, but eventually this phone, whether I keep it an extra year or if it just becomes a camera in my studio or part of my FaceTime continuity camera setup. We'll have to see. But yeah, it's fine. So that's one thing to celebrate. But we didn't want to wait until the Apple original news to talk about this, because just on Saturday evening, we had something else to celebrate. We may be returning to AFC Richmond after all. And have I been slapping the believe sign at every given opportunity and telling everyone else to? I'm not going to take, full responsibility for this, but, positive vibes, as Ted Lasso says, go a long way.
Yes, it seems like the 4th season of Ted Lasso could be happening. We've all sort of been manifesting it, wishing it into existence, and it seems like those first steps are coming together. Warner Brothers Television have picked up options on Hannah Waddingham, Brett Goldstein, and Jeremy Swift in the first moves towards a 4th season of Ted Lasso. Early preparations are underway on a writer's room, with hopes for production to begin in early 2025. The next step is to negotiate new contracts with the SAG-AFTRA actors involved, whose options have expired. So we've got those 3 main characters involved, but of course, lots and lots of people in the world of Ted Lasso that we want to see come back, including, of course, Jason Sudeikis, the one who everyone's been kind of waiting to see if he would bless this 4th season and kind of be on board with it moving forward, and kind of what his involved would even look like. Matt Bellany talked about this just today, kind of speculating based on what he's hearing about this 4th season, and basically his theory is that Ted Lasso, the titular character, will not feature super prominently in this 4th season, but it'll be more about the ensemble, which makes a lot of sense to me. It seems like the holdup could have been figuring out how that works story-wise, and it sounds like they've come up with something that Jason Sudeikis is on board with. So whatever the show is called, I'm excited to get back into that world, whether it's the 4th season or spinoff or whatever it is. I'm just really, really happy about this, and the 3 that are already involved have me very excited, and hopefully we'll hear about more and more of those actors getting those contracts locked back in very soon.
Yeah, I think it's good news. It's good positive news. I will say, I think whatever way this was planned to go, whether or not, this was the initial plan from those involved on the talent side, they did need to have a break before 4th season or the Richmond way, whatever it is going to be. And yeah, I'm excited to see what the writing is like this time, especially given how, it's clearly not just going to be one season, it's going to be many seasons. If it's a new deal, it'll probably be a 3 or 4 season run. And that means they don't need to tie up so many loose ends in, a block of 12 episodes, which is what I think kind of had a negative effect on the 3rd and final season of Ted Lasso. As much as I enjoyed it, there were things that were, either kind of rushed or left. So yeah, I'm excited for the return, and I'm excited to kind of see Richmond bouncing again as well with this news. So yeah, great stuff overall.
Well, in addition to that awesome news kicking off the show, we've got lots of great stuff coming up this week. We've got 2 recaps for Lady in the Lake and Time Bandits. We've got the release of Apple Original docuseries K-Pop Idols, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and a busy week in streaming. But we have to turn now, Sigmund, to the all-important predictions for Apple's upcoming It's Glowtime event, which was announced this week. We knew it was coming soon. We look forward to it every September, and now it's official. Apple's It's Glowtime event will be taking place September 9th at 10 a.m. Pacific. So we've got just a little bit to wait, but in the meantime, of course, we'll all be speculating about what it is Apple could announce. And we thought, with a couple weeks to go, we'd go ahead and put our stakes in the ground and say what exactly we think Apple's going to announce. Of course, we always make this a little bit of a friendly competition, and we come up with a scoring system for a way to just keep track of who predicted it the best. This time around, we're going to have 5 regular picks worth 2 points each, and we'll round out our predictions with 1 out there pick worth 5 points each. You want to go first, Sigmund?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty clear, I think, by now to everyone that September marks the iPhone event. So we'll no doubt be seeing iPhone 16 and 16 Pros this time, like we do each year. And I'm going with the iPhone 16 Pro line getting larger screens. I say this because it seems to be a running trend, but also, lots of people like to consume on their screens. Very much the iPhone is treated by me like a tool, so to speak, rather than something that I consume too much on. But yeah, my first pick, iPhone 16 Pro line to get larger screens. How much larger? I didn't need to state, but what do you think?
I think this is a pretty solid pick. I think those 2 points are probably in the bag there. As you said, it seems like every couple of years the screens increase in size. Those increases have gotten smaller and smaller. I think it was a couple years ago they actually just decreased the bezel size, so the phone didn't get bigger, but the screen did, and it was subtle, but it was cool. And I always love pulling out a new phone and realizing how much bigger it is than my previous phone and thinking this is ridiculously big and usually laughing about it. And then, of course, a month later you see the previous phone and you're like, well, how did I ever get by with that screen size, right? So you're a Pro Max user, right?
I am, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we're both rocking the largest screens possible, which is great, as you said, for consuming video, but it's also great for reading, which is something I do a ton on my iPhone, RSS, and read later, and social media as well. I want to fit as much of that as I can on there, so if the screens are getting bigger, I'm happy about that.
I think also just good for older people with that eyesight, right? Me included.
Mm-hmm.
So there we are. That's why I have the big projection screen. That's the real reason. What is your first pick for this Glowtime event?
I'm going to go iPhone hardware as well. I'm going to predict that a new camera button is included on the iPhone 16 Pro line, but not the iPhone 16 line. So this will be the Pro exclusive hardware feature this year. That's my prediction anyway. A button to not only launch the camera, but also take pictures. And, we'll see what else they do with it. But I think this is a feature that people have been asking for some time. And the action button became that for a lot of people.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But personally, my action button is a productivity machine. It kind of helps me get into my shortcuts and stuff like that. So I use it for that kind of stuff and not for launching my camera. And as I've been testing iOS 18 over the summer, I've also swapped out that camera shortcut on my lock screen as well. So getting the camera for me is actually harder than ever. And having a hardware button on the side of my phone that can't be remapped and that only does that, I think would be great.
Do you also think that maybe the action camera ended up being a great shortcut to third-party camera apps that weren't necessarily Apple's? And I wonder if by bringing in a capture button, whether or not that kind of solidifies Apple's dominance really in that space. I mean, their camera app is incredible, but some of the things that you can do through like the Blackmagic camera app or through Halide are just really, really impressive.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, I guess, if it can integrate with third-party camera apps as well. I think that button is it's a mystery exactly all that it's going to be able to do, but I'm excited for it if it does come, and now I've got points on the line as well.
Well, my next pick kind of ties in with your previous pick, and that is that this new button, which I'm going to call the capture button, has some sort of touch-based interaction, maybe to swipe between modes. Now, I mention this because I was actually having a conversation earlier this week with someone with regard to the iPhone and it kind of losing a bit of character now that it's just like a slab of glass, and really kind of looking at the previous, hardware from generations gone by. We reminisced about the iPod Classic and the click wheel and these kind of mechanics that I think are lost in modern day technology, unfortunately. So I'm really excited for something like this to come to the iPhone, and maybe this introduces a new era where Apple start to look at those kind of interactions once again.
I like this idea. The rumor is that if this button does come, it'll probably be solid state, so not an actual button that clicks in and out, but just a part of the device that's touch sensitive. So I think that idea makes a lot of sense, that you could slide your finger over it either to switch modes, as you said, or maybe zoom in and out, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm imagining this as like the world's best fidget toy. Just hold your phone in your hand, just be, going in and out or switching modes on that. I can imagine I'll be spending some time there. Also intriguing to think if Apple did open this up to other developers while that app is open, what you could do with that.
Flappy Bird, the next generation.
There you go. I mean, going back to some more Crossy Road, or like even just like scrolling a web page could be kind of cool, running your finger along the side of your phone. So there's a lot that could be done there if they do that solid state button with the touch integration. So yeah, good pick. Well, I'm going to stick in the camera world. I'm not going to talk about the capture button anymore. I don't want to put too many points on that one thing in case it ends up getting scrapped at the last second. But I'm going to predict that another iPhone camera gets a 48 megapixel sensor. We saw this come to the Pro line not too long ago, just the main camera. So I don't know for sure if this is going to be like the telephoto lens getting the 48 megapixel sensor and getting that better quality out of those photos, or maybe it could actually come to the iPhone 16 line and work its way down. So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I know Apple's really proud of that sensor and the work they've done on it, and I have to imagine that they're going to want to keep pushing it into more and more cameras, whether that's more on the Pro or bring it down to the regular line.
And I just think it's another really good reason to really look at the standard iPhone rather than the Pro phone, because they're so capable now. Of course, you and I would probably always opt for the Pro phone, but yeah, the regular iPhones are incredible. And if this new generation does get a 48 megapixel sensor camera, amongst other things, then yeah, great time to buy an iPhone. For me, my pick, this next pick, which is pick 3, is a new range of cases and bands are announced, moving away completely from the fine woven range. Now, over the month since fine woven was announced, there have been people saying, well, if you put a little bit of effort into cleaning a fine woven case, they actually hold up pretty well. The reality is, though, the majority of us are quite lazy. And, cleaning our case, which we probably should do more often anyway than we do, is just not something that's in our routines. I'll be honest, I looked at the fine woven cases when they first came out, and I didn't like the feel of them. I didn't like the fact that they didn't hold up that well. So I actually picked up a silicone case this year, and I think it's worth mentioning how poorly the silicone cases held up this year. Chips all around it, they began to show kind of in like July time. Really disappointed on the state of official Apple cases for iPhone and other devices right now. So I'm pretty excited about this. And not only that, I think I'm pretty excited for potential watch bands as well, moving away from this like fine woven range.
Yeah, fine woven, it was a valiant effort, but at least in its current iteration, not one that I think is long for this world. So it'd be interesting to see what Apple does there. You mentioned watch bands, so I'm going to make my Apple Watch pick for my third prediction here. My prediction is that the Series 10 Apple Watch line will feature larger displays, but no redesign or new health sensors. So it's the 10th anniversary of the Apple Watch being announced. This is the 10th generation, and we've all been interested to see if Apple is going to do like an iPhone 10 style kind of redesign. And based on what we've heard so far, that doesn't seem to be materializing, which is unfortunate because this is the year I was planning to upgrade my watch from my Series 7. So we'll see what happens, but I'm imagining when Apple wants to do a hardware refresh on the watches, it seems like what they generally do is increase that screen size, decrease the bezel, and kind of use that as a refresh to the line. But I'm not predicting any major changes and no redesign in the form of how the bands attach or anything like that either. I think it's going to be a pretty standard screen size upgrade on the Apple Watch and not much else.
Interesting. I mean, it's the 10th anniversary of the announcement, right? But not the 10th anniversary of the watch. That's next year.
Right.
So maybe that's when everything changes. We'll have to wait and see. But yes, watches. I've still got a Series 7, and it works perfectly well for my needs. Talking of accessories, let's talk about headphones. Because I mentioned the AirPods Max. I love AirPods Max, but they're getting quite long in the tooth. They're missing quite a lot. And so I think this could be the perfect time to finally introduce a USB-C variant of AirPods Max with some of those missing features like conversation awareness and conversation boost and a lot of things that are just missing right now. So my fourth pick is AirPods Max. I will also just throw a little bit of jeopardy into this pick. I'll say that I think alongside any like headphones that are announced at this event, that we get a companion app that will allow us to adjust EQ on AirPods and allow us to update them in a less janky way than is currently available.
See, I was with you on the USB-C AirPods Max, but you lost me on the app for updates and EQ because that's something that Apple's resisted for a long time. I hope you're right. I think it's something I'd love to see, but yeah, we'll see if that comes. And I think the introduction of new AirPods Max would be the perfect time for it, and it's definitely time for new AirPods Max, especially with the transition to USB-C on so many of Apple's devices. This would be the perfect time for it. I just got some Beats headphones, so I'm not in the market for AirPods Max, but I will live vicariously through you if and when they do come, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on them because, yeah, I love the whole thing with AirPods Max. They just don't necessarily work for me. But I'm going to keep going with the AirPods theme with my fourth pick. Let's talk about the fourth generation AirPods that are rumored to come at this event. We've been living with the third gen for quite some time now, and I think the regular AirPods and the AirPods Pro kind of leapfrog each other in terms of how they're updated. So we get the AirPods Pro, and that gives us some hints about what could be coming in the next generation of AirPods. So I'm going to predict that the fourth gen AirPods include an H2 chip and volume controls on the stem, but no active noise cancellation. So I've been thinking about what makes the AirPods Pro the Pro version. And, you know, there's lots of niceties, but I think there's lots of those that could go into the fourth gen AirPods while still keeping the line differentiated. USB-C, you know, wireless charging probably as a standard for the fourth gen. If there's a cheaper version of the fourth gen, maybe they sacrifice that, but I feel like that will be standard with the mid-tier AirPods that are coming. I feel like active noise cancellation is one of those features that falls into that Pro category that Apple could charge extra for. And if active noise cancellation comes to the fourth gen AirPods, as some of the rumors have said, I'm just not sure how they differentiate between the AirPods Pro and the regular AirPods. So that's what I'm thinking.
I mean, it's interesting because you talk about how they kind of, you know, leapfrog one another, right? And it has, for the last couple of generations, felt like the AirPods have just like slowly caught up with the AirPods Pro. And we've heard lots of rumors in the past about more health sensors and more stuff like, you know, head tracking where you can like nod to reply to Siri. That kind of stuff that I just feel like would stick on to the AirPods Pro. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think this is almost a dead cert. The fourth generation of AirPods coming in this event. I'm going to change things up a little bit because, of course, you know, with AirPods, I listen to Apple Music. I listen to Apple Music through Apple One, which is where I get my cloud, my news, arcade, of course, Apple TV Plus, and Apple Fitness Plus as well. And I wonder if it's the right time to add yet another benefit to this Apple One subscription bundle. And I say that because we are getting into this time where we're going to be able to send messages via satellite, which I think is crazy. and being able to try that on beta has been mind-boggling to me each time it's worked. But also, this is the event where Apple Intelligence is going to have such a big part to play. We've not mentioned it once yet, but it's quite clear by the invite and the glow of the invite that it's talking about the redesigned Home Assistant and how that looks and how we interact with it. And I wonder if some of these integrations that we're expecting from third parties will actually be something that's packaged into a subscription model of some kind, and then that gets packaged into Apple One, which then gets everyone involved in all of the services that, of course, they're generating lots and lots of revenue from, and it just, continues that kind of perpetual lock-in. So that is my fifth pick, and that is about Apple announcing at least one new benefit for Apple One subscriptions. Of course, Apple Intelligence coming. What do you think?
I'm a big fan of Apple One. I'm always happy to see new perks coming to the bundle. I feel like in order to keep people involved with these sorts of services, you have to keep adding fresh things to them, remind people why they're getting the value out of that money that they're giving you every month. So I could definitely see something like the satellite texting being included with it, because we haven't seen how Apple's going to monetize any of the satellite features. They just keep kicking that can down the road and saying, oh, it's going to be free for a little bit longer, But I mean, they're just losing money there. Eventually they have to find a way to pay for it. So that's probably the most likely one. If Apple Intelligence ever includes any paid features, I, of course, would hope that it would also be included in Apple One. Yeah, I think this is a cool pick. And you never know, they could just surprise us with some other little addition too, like when they debuted iCloud Plus with a bunch of just random things that were kind of included in there, many of which I really enjoy. So I would love to see this, and any movement in Apple's services areas is fun for me, which I'll get to in a little bit with my out there pick. But first, Sigmund, I have to do it to you. My final pick, I'm going iPad mini. The iPad that's received no love this year. It's getting a refresh, and it's going to get Apple Intelligence in the form of an A18 chip. So I do deserve some props here, I think, because I'm holding back a little bit. What I want is an M2 iPad mini. I think that would be just a dream machine. I don't know if they could even get an M series chip in a package that small, but it would be incredible. The iPad mini is usually spec to spec with the iPad Air, so that's actually what I would expect if the pattern were staying, but from everything that I've heard, I think it's actually going to be an A series chip, and it's going to have to be A18 to get Apple Intelligence. So that's my prediction. I don't know that we're going to see much more for the iPad mini other than that. I have a long list of wishes. I love the iPad mini and would love to see it get a bunch of updates. I don't know that it's going to be a big one this year, but I do think it's going to get that spec bump to get it in line with all the other devices with Apple Intelligence.
I will just say that if we do get an iPad mini, and I'm really hopeful we do, we're all winning, because the iPad mini is my favourite iPad still. Yes, the screen on the M4 iPad Pro is incredible. The tandem OLED, wow. But in terms of the iPad mini, I would say in some cases it's pocketable. If I have it in my bag, I don't notice it, right? It's just it, and it's there, and it has the functionality I need. The iPad Pro M4 feels like a bit of a waste on me, in all honesty, as much as the screen is beautiful. And the iPad mini is always going to be my first love when it comes to the iPads. A great final regular pick. Now, I want to flip things a little bit and ask for your out there pick, because I've got a funny feeling mine is going to be so out there that we're going to need to talk about it a little more.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm going to stick in the services realm with my out there pick, And this is a service that's near and dear to my heart and one that I honestly worry about sometimes, so I'd love to see some movement for it. So my pick is going to be that Apple announces a new partner for the Apple Card. I use my Apple Card every day. I've loved the integration between Apple and Goldman Sachs, but from everything we've heard, it seems like that relationship has not gone the way that Goldman Sachs wanted and hasn't been as beneficial for the bank as they had set out to be. And so we heard a rumor a while back that Apple was kind of fielding some ideas of other people to partner with. The Apple Card, I want to see Apple continue to push in financial services in this way. I think that there are things they can do and are doing around financial health, helping people manage their finances that I think are very commendable, and I want to see them continue to do. So I would love to see an Apple executive on this event stand up and say, we've got some news about the future of Apple Card. We've got this new foundation, and we're so excited to tell you about it. That's what I'm hoping for.
Of course, you get your kind of day-to-day experience of Apple Card because you're in the US, right? But everyone outside of the US, remind us, beyond the beautiful white card that is like thick metal, which as a collector of everything Apple, I'm gutted I don't have the ability to have. What are the benefits of the card right now as someone that uses it?
Well, it's built right into the Wallet app, so you manage all your transactions and your bill payments and all of that there, which I think is just handy and actually opens up to some shortcuts integrations as well if you're interested in that sort of thing. But I think the big thing for people who are trying to manage their finances, and especially if this is like your first credit card, Apple is very transparent with you about what you have to pay to avoid fees and helping you make sure that you're not paying interest on what you're paying, which I think is awesome and, kind of goes against, I guess, what the bank again would be going for with a credit card, which could be part of the problem. But they're trying to make it as easy as possible to stay on top of your payments to make sure that you're not getting behind or getting in a position where you're paying a bunch of interest that you don't need to. There's also awesome family integration where you can add people, even people who are just like authorized users, to help them build credit and keep up with transactions and have control over that sort of thing. And then you've got your cash back. If you're spending a lot of money on the App Store, you're going to get 3% back there. Anything with Apple's 3%, anything with Apple Pay's 2%. So it's a pretty good card if you're like me and very integrated in the Apple world. And yeah, I love it and I want to see it continue.
Well, I mean, if a new partner does come, hopefully it will roll out beyond the US because, yeah, it sounds like something I'd be interested in just on the financial health side of things and being able to give access to my card to certain family members. Yeah, great. A great out there pick, but I think I'm going to top mine because I'll be honest, there's a few ways that I've been thinking of how I could go about this out there pick. I could be blatant and just say that I expect to see some integration of Apple Intelligence that comes to something from the TV and home range. But I thought that would probably be a little too vague. But there's something we can discuss. So instead, I'm going to just come out and say it. I think that this is the perfect time for Apple to announce a new device for their TV and home range. And when I say a new device, I don't necessarily mean like a new product, but maybe an upgrade to either the Apple TV, predictable, I know, for people listening to an Apple TV podcast. But I think more overdue than the Apple TV, which, we're getting to that 2-year mark, which is normally when we see a refresh. The HomePod Mini has been very, very long in the tooth. And I don't quite know how Apple are going to be able to tell their Apple Intelligence story without there being a story of an Apple Intelligence assistant that's accessible to everyone, right? Yes, Apple Intelligence is available on M-based iPads and Macs. But for those that aren't upgrading their iPhone, maybe there's a way in which the HomePod can deliver the Apple intelligence to the users. It gets the recognition from people's voices, right? And I just think this would be a cool kind of limited, albeit, portal into this Apple intelligence story, but one that I think is needed if Apple are going to really tell a captivating story in which to sell this new platform, which they're trying to hype up.
That is a huge hole for Apple Intelligence right now, is the home, which of course is the Siri that gets picked up. If you're in a home that has a HomePod and your phone's in the same room, your HomePod is generally the one that's going to respond because it's just the one that seems to be higher in whatever that priority list is. And so if you're trying to do something that's Apple Intelligence specific and it's not available on the HomePod, then I don't know how you do. I guess you'd have to press and hold the button on your phone, which would be kind of annoying when you're trying to do other things. And the whole point of having the HomePod is that it's hands-free. So yeah, I could definitely see some kind of Apple Intelligence integration with the HomePod. I think the thing to look for probably as a hint that you're on the right track is what they do with the Apple Watch Silicon this year. If there's something in there that helps with Apple Intelligence, that's generally the same track that the HomePod and HomePod Mini are on. So yeah, I don't know they're going to go like full A18 in the HomePod Mini. They did have an A-series chip in the original HomePod and went away from that later. But yeah, I agree with you. Some kind of story for Apple Intelligence in the home is needed. And yeah, I'd love to see it at this keynote.
And kind of coming up with this out there pick, I'm a sucker for reading the tea leaves on these invites that we get from Apple. The colours this time in the glow, right? I don't think they're quite the same colours of the glow that we've seen in the beta when accessing Siri. I think they could be representing HomePod minis. And the shape of them, and so that's what I'm going with there. Yeah, I have to say I'm more excited for this event than I thought I was going to be. Now that we've talked about it, I guess kind of 2 weeks before the event going in, what are our intentions?
Ooh, well, the more we talk about the phone and especially that capture button, the more excited I get about that. So I think I'll probably end up upgrading my phone. The Apple Watch, if my prediction comes true and it's not that big of a redesign, I'm probably going to get the battery swapped on my Series 7 and hold on for another year because that's the only issue I'm having with it. I love my Series 7 Apple Watch, so I'd be okay sticking with that. I'd be tempted to upgrade the iPad mini, but I'm not sure if a new iPad is in my future right now. So I think it's just the phone for me for now. But yeah, like you, the more we talk about it, the more excited I get. So who knows? Maybe I'll get sucked in and end up spending a bunch of money on my Apple Card that I shouldn't. And then, I'll be looking up how to avoid that interest later.
Oh, dear.
What about you?
Spend wisely, people. I got to say, I feel like this year was all about Apple Vision Pro for me. I am still loving Apple Vision Pro. I'm waiting for something big, is what I would say. I'm waiting to see what this Apple Intelligence story really turns out to be. And once that is kind of spelt out, at least, for 2024 and the next 12 months, I'll have a better idea. But right now, I'm very happy with everything that I already own.
I think that's a great way to look at it going into an event. You can enjoy it for what it is without necessarily feeling like you have to have everything that's announced. So that's great. Of course, we'd love to hear what our listeners are thinking about the event, what your predictions are, and what you're excited about. So be sure to let us know and come back here in a couple of episodes and we grade our predictions and talk about what we got right and what we got wrong.
Now, Devon, a lot of picks this year were centered around services. One of the big ones, Apple Arcade, right? And we've been so used to new and upcoming titles coming. One of the biggest, I think, was Monument Valley 2 when that arrived on Apple Arcade, and that kind of blew my mind. I don't know how many hours I've poured into that across my devices. So I was very, very excited to hear about the announcement for Monument Valley 3. And then I heard a tadum.
Yes, the ominous Tadum. The big reveal is that Monument Valley 3 is coming December 10th, which is exciting for fans of the game, but it's not coming to Apple Arcade, which really surprising announcement. Instead, the title will be a Netflix Games exclusive. You know, Apple has always had a good relationship with Us2, the developer behind Monument Valley, which, or at least from the outside, it seemed like, you know, they were on board with Apple Arcade very early, so I would have just assumed that anything coming from them would have gone to Apple Arcade. So this is a huge surprise to me, and I mean, I'm subscribed to Netflix, so I'm going to have access to it either way, but it just seems like it would have been such a good fit for Apple Arcade that I'm kind of shocked by this.
I think it's interesting in terms of strategy, right, for Netflix, because I think they've publicly said that they're not really making any money from their Netflix games division right now, and that isn't necessarily part of their strategy to do so, but more the strategy is to add some variety into the entertainment offerings that their service brings. And it got me thinking, we've heard that I think a large proportion of Apple Arcade subscribers are actually getting their Apple Arcade access through Apple One as part of the bundle, and there aren't too many that are subscribing to Apple Arcade a la carte. Got me wondering if Apple Arcade should be thought of in the same way as how Netflix are doing things, and have that service folded into the Apple TV Plus service. I wonder what you thought about that.
I personally think they belong separate. I've always been a little bit confused by Netflix's game strategy. It seems like they're just trying to keep their subscribers engaged, give them another reason to stick with the service when, you know, price increases and kind of just general frustrations with the service can sometimes lead to churn. So I think for the game that Netflix is playing, where their main priority is keeping people subscribed and also capturing their attention so that they have a reason to stay subscribed to Netflix, I think combining those things maybe makes some sense. But on Apple's side of things, they've got the bundle. So, I mean, if you want it all, you can get it all. But the way that they pitch Apple TV Plus and the way they pitch the Apple Arcade, I think are two very different things.
Mm.
And so I think they make sense as separate services. And who knows, maybe eventually all the streaming services will be offering games and Apple will just kind of have to bundle them together. I think it really depends on if Netflix can turn that into something that's profitable and that works well for game developers as well, and really integrate that in a way that makes sense. But right now, with what I've seen so far with Netflix games, I don't see the connection there between Apple Arcade and Apple TV Plus in terms of just combining them personally.
You know, it's funny because the connection that I make is you get these like offshoot like mini games that are available that tie into some of their Netflix original shows and films. And man, I want to see some kind of game tie-in with Severance when it comes to just try and work out what's going on with the scary numbers. So yeah, I personally, Devon, see it eventually going the way that everything is combined. But I get it. I get where you're coming from. I personally could see a name, Apple TV and Arcade.
Oh, okay. Well, the tie-in idea does get me thinking. I could definitely see some titles coming to both services at the same time. Like, you know, you get this game included with Apple TV Plus, and if you like it, oh, by the way, we also have this library of games. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But now I really do want that number sim from Severance. I want to figure out which of the numbers make me happy and which of them make me scared.
Now, let's talk about Apple TV specifically, because Macs have updated their app to finally take advantage of Apple TV's top shelf, which is where you put your app there and you'll get added functionality in the top shelf when it's highlighted. And their integration with Apple TV's top shelf will allow Apple TV customers the ability to pick shows and movies from the service right from that home screen. And who would have known that Macs would be the company to really show its love to Apple's platforms? One thing I noticed during WWDC this year was when tvOS was shown off, and I think we've mentioned it before, Disney Plus is on the top shelf, but they do absolutely nothing with that space. So I think next year at WWDC, Max, at least for now, should be there. We'll have to wait and see. Great stuff either way. And no, I won't mention the lack of Atmos on anything but the most expensive tier. I promise.
Another streaming service that we're fans of is Paramount Plus, and in the lead up to NFL season kickoff, Paramount Plus is offering new and returning subscribers 50% off the first year of an annual plan through September 6th, bringing the essential plan down to $29.99 for a year, and Paramount Plus with Showtime down to $59.99. We'll leave a link in the show notes to that promotion if you'd like to take advantage of it. And we're going to have more to say about exploring the different streaming apps on tvOS next week, but I'd say these two updates are pretty positive.
Absolutely. Now, something else positive is trailers, right? We're always very positive when there's some trailer talk. And this week saw the debut trailer for La Maison, which sees high fashion meet high drama in a behind-the-curtain look at an iconic French haute couture house. When the family dynasty behind the house falls into scandal, they must find a way to reinvent themselves or be destroyed by their rivals.
Le Duc, c'est avant tout une maison familiale.
Elle est aussi fragile que la dentelle qu'il fabrique. Elle ne tient qu'à un fil.
Diane Revel est obsédée par le Duc.
Tant qu'elle veut nous posséder, celle-là.
On vendra plus rien à personne tant que Vincent sera officiellement en place. Seule stratégie possible, c'est une rupture et pas une continuité. C'est Paloma Castel. Quoi? Viens prendre la direction artistique à la place de Vincent.
Tu l'as prévenu que notre menu préféré c'était de s'entre-dévorer?
This one stars Lambert Wilson, Amira Cesar, Carol Bouquet, Zita Henro, and a bunch of others. This is a really intriguing trailer segment. It sees the House of Ledoux, led by Vincent, come under attack by Diane Rovell, who recruits Vincent's nephew Victor to her side. A little bit of family betrayal there. There's also an internal coup trying to replace Vincent with a younger designer named Paloma. So there's attacks on every side for the House of Ledoux, especially Vincent in particular. The stakes are high and egos are on full display in the dramatic world of French fashion. This one looks like a really intriguing story, a fun ride, and one that I wasn't necessarily sure how interested I'd be in before the trailer, but based on this trailer alone, I am all in. How about you?
Yeah, I am all in because this is a show that really, I feel just based on this trailer, first off, love the Eurocentric music on display, but the trailer seems to be a mix of two of my favourite HBO shows in recent times, namely Succession and Industry, which is currently airing its third season on Max. I think if you like either, then La Maison has some promise based on this trailer, though I do hope there's as much wicked humour thrown in as is in the aforementioned shows, because that's one thing that I thought was probably a little lacking in this initial trailer. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, we'll find out when La Maison premieres September 20th with its first 2 of 10 episodes. Really looking forward to diving into this world. Of course, we were able to dive into this world, but in a past setting earlier this year with the new look. So really cool and very, very exciting. That isn't where the excitement stops in the world of Apple original news, though, because we got yet another update on Apple original films and their evolving strategy, with thanks to the wonderful reporting by Nicole Sperling at the New York Times. To give a little bit of a roundup of this, regarding Wolves, which of course is the film that's coming in September starring Brad Pitt and George Clooney, that was supposed to get a wide theatrical release and now is getting a limited theatrical release for 1 week before it comes to streaming the following week. The film's director John Watts told Vanity Fair that he had found out about the change in plans only days before the announcement, saying that he always felt that this Wolves film was a theatrical movie and that he made it to be seen in theatres, and that he thinks that's the best way to see it. So I think that's something that, is echoed by us. Bigger screen, great sound system. That's the way everyone would like to see it. On top of that, though, this month, the Instigators joined Apple TV Plus after 1 week of a limited theatrical release, and I think it's been deemed quite successful. The film helped add about 50,000 subscribers, more than the number Napoleon accounted for when it was released last year, according to Parrot Analytics this week. So very exciting there. On a kind of backstage note, Ricky Strauss, who was Disney's former president of marketing, who was hired last year to oversee creative marketing and strategy, he left after 16 months, hasn't been replaced. And what's interesting about that is what that means for Wolves. We've heard that it's reportedly been an acquisition that Apple had to substantially outbid on, paying George Clooney and Brad Pitt more than $35 million each, and director John Watts more than $15 million. This is supposedly following Apple executives in Cupertino already questioning the entertainment division over the amount of money being spent on movies, with there being a fault within the company not to risk a public disappointment should the movie not succeed at the box office. And we've talked previously about how the company felt that was affecting them on a PR level more than anything else. And that was followed by this spring, where top executives held a meeting at company headquarters, resulting in the decision for Apple's studio to make 1 or 2 event-sized films a year, with big budgets and expansive theatrical releases. The rest of its films would have budgets of $80 million or less, which sounds like a lot of money per film, but when you look at what independent films are required for these days, that's going to be quite competitive. It's going to be about market share. It's going to be about how many markets they can deliver, your art to. And that's where I think Apple is still strongly positioned. What do you think about this now that we've got an idea of where the strategy seems to be heading?
I feel like this report, it's really well done, and it brings together a lot of these different threads that we've talked about on the show. And when it comes to Apple and theatrical, this meeting that we've talked about before, where the strategy seems to have changed. Although what confuses me a little bit, and it makes me feel bad for John Watts especially, is this decision to have 1 or 2 event-sized movies a year with this budget cut off at about $80 million. Wolves obviously would qualify for that normally, right? I mean, they've spent more than that just on the 2 lead actors and the director. So I feel like this is that event-sized movie that they're talking about, but just the way things have gone this year and Apple's kind of not wanting to have that PR hit again, I feel like that's where Wolves kind of got caught up in this. Yeah, I feel like it's just bad timing for that particular film. Whereas you've got a film like F1 next year that they're definitely putting that money behind it. It seems like maybe we'll have 1 or 2 F1 style movies going forward. Maybe Wolves 2 could end up in that bucket. But yeah, I still feel like it's a shame that Wolves isn't going to get its time on the silver screen around the world like was anticipated. But it makes sense, and I feel like if Apple can really focus on those 1 or 2 films and marketing them well and really getting the excitement behind them and making sure they're the right films to be in wide theaters, that could be a good shift in strategy. I think this particular transition is just a little bit rough on that film in particular.
I think the $80 million, again, is a good budget per film. And especially when it comes to, all right, I said acquiring independent films because I'm thinking of like Coda and their deal with Pathé back in 2000. Am I saying that right? Time just goes by so quickly. But a while back. And it does make me wonder if that is, going to be Apple kind of getting back to their strategy of, yes, they're going to have a big F1, they might have a massive blockbuster, but they're going to get back to telling the stories that kind of resonate with the Apple brand, right? And I think Coda was one of them, and that's why it was so special. And if reporting is to be believed, I think I might be spot on with this, because Deadline this week reported that Mark Wahlberg and Apple are looking to get back together for a second Apple Original Films outing following The Family Plan, which I know you loved. I was a little bit cold on. Well, the company have landed Weekend Warriors, a new feature to be written and directed by Steven Chbosky of The Perks of Being a Wallflower fame, which was a film that came out a number of years ago, but I remember tearing up to it. The project is an adaptation of last year's German language sports comedy drama Weekend Rebels, which follows the true story of a father and his autistic son who go on a quest to find a favourite Premier League soccer club by visiting every single team so that Jason can decide which team he wants. And I did revisit the trailer of this original German film, and it's hilarious because he says, well, if I can't find a team in Germany, then we'll travel around Europe. It's just very, very heartfelt. Now, the US adaptation, which has been acquired by Apple, is said to adopt the story for finding a favourite NBA team, with the remake produced by Dede Gardner and Jeremy Kleiner for Plan B, and Spencer Bailey and LeBron James, as well as Jamel Henderson for Spring Hill. And for those unaware, the Spring Hill Entertainment Development and Production Company was founded in 2020 by LeBron James and Maverick Carter. And from my understanding, this will be the first partnership stemming from a rumoured collaboration all the way back before Apple TV Plus was even announced. If you remember, the week before, in 2019, there was a stream and there was loads of little hints as to who could be collaborating. Well, LeBron James had some iMessages showing up during that stream. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. I have seen the original film in question, and it is superb. And there's some really funny and heartfelt moments. So I think this is a story and a film that could really work for Apple's original film division. But I really hope the adaptation plays it as straight as possible. I think that's something that's very important. Because I have seen a little bit of criticism floating around that the original film didn't represent everything as succinctly as some people would want. So, very, very excited about this. For listeners in Germany, they'll be able to check out the film because Weekend Rebels is available in the TV app in Germany and Austria.
Let's talk renewals for a moment. We've got a couple of big renewal announcements. The first one that maybe isn't such a surprise, but still good to know nonetheless. We knew a second season of Criminal Record was on the way, but this week Apple officially made the renewal announcement and released a synopsis for Season 2. In the second season, June, played by Cush Jumbo, is the senior officer on the scene when a political rally is attacked by far-right counter-protesters. The violent clash leaves a young man dead, and June, consumed with guilt, is desperate to bring the unknown killer to justice. It seems as if her best hope is Daniel Hegarty, played by Peter Capaldi, now a key figure in the shadowy world of police intelligence. He may have the answer she needs, but to get his help, she will have to accept a dangerous bargain. I was curious how they were going to continue this story, this dynamic between these two people after last season. It really felt like a story that was kind of told and done with. And so I think seeing them back combined in this way, they're put in a situation where she really needs his help and he's going to make her work for it, it seems like. I love seeing these two together. Actually, I love the idea that this could be an opportunity for them to kind of influence each other and bring each other to grow a little bit more. So yeah, I think this is a cool concept for a second season. We knew it was coming, but again, Apple likes to roll out these renewal announcements as kind of marketing to keep the idea fresh in people's minds about these shows. And now we learn a little bit more about season 2.
Yeah, I mean, and we were way ahead, right, of this news. 2 episodes ago, we mentioned that Criminal Record had been renewed for a second season. So, yeah, good to see that it's officially announced, and I'm looking forward to it, actually. Quite hard-hitting, that first season, but something altogether a little lighter, because that wasn't the only renewal announced this week. Acapulco will return for its 4th season. And with that announcement from Apple, made officially just moments before we began recording, Eugenio Derbez had this to say: "Having Apple order a 4th season of Acapulco is beyond thrilling." He said, "I'm incredibly grateful to our amazing partners, the talented cast and crew, and especially the audience whose love and support have made this journey possible. It's rare for shows centered on Latino stories to make it this far, and that makes this milestone even more meaningful. Representation matters, and continuing to share these vibrant stories on a global stage is something Ben Odell and I are deeply proud of." So, very, very cool. I know we were a little bit lukewarm on this last season, but, you know, it'd be interesting to see where the story goes. What do you think?
Acapulco has a special place in my heart, Sigmund. I'm always going to come back to Las Colinas no matter how many times they make a new season, so I can't wait to see season 4. I'm just going to choose to be excited for it and hopeful for some bright, cheery, and, you know, poppy episodes of Acapulco season 4 to come.
You know what else I'm excited for? Blitz, the upcoming Steve McQueen film. Of course, we've talked about it before. It stars Saoirse Ronan as a desperate and protective mother during World War II. Well, alongside its gala opening of the London Film Festival in October, later on in the month, it's also making its Australian premiere at the Adelaide Film Festival on the 26th of October at Capri Theatre. Tickets are available now, which is very, very cool. And I guess if you're like on that side of the world, it's a plane trip. I know. But you might be able to check out something else Apple TV related.
If you're so inclined, you could take a trip to Seoul to check out a new pop-up shop that Apple has put together for the debut of Pachinko Season 2. This was pointed out by Michael Stieber in the most recent issue of the Tabletops newsletter. Great newsletter all about the Apple stores and changes happening there. Definitely check that out. But Apple has opened up this pop-up store in Seoul's Project Rent Space. It includes snacks, a pachinko parlor, and a small theater. And it'll be open from August 24th through September 8th. So if you want a real-life pachinko experience and you can get to Seoul, it's a great opportunity there.
I would love to see more of these experiences just expand throughout the world, right? To really kind of connect with the audiences in different regions. Apple TV Plus being a global and really the first truly global service. Who knows what they could have done with Slow Horses, and who knows, maybe they will. So, yeah, very, very cool. And that is this week's Apple Original News. But we have so much when it comes to Apple TV releases this week, from Apple Originals to everything else that's coming to the TV app. Where do we want to start, Devon?
Well, let's start with today, Sigmund. We've got 3 Apple Originals coming out today. We've got the penultimate episode of Sunny, a series I'm very much enjoying and highly recommend people check out as we get closer and closer to its finale. We've also got new episodes of Women in Blue and Bad Monkey.
Tomorrow, Apple Arcade releases are aplenty. We've got Castle Crumble Spatial, alongside recent Apple Arcade updates that are worth mentioning. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate offers a new 4-player local co-op mode and online cross-platform co-op mode. Very, very cool. Something I want to revisit for sure. Then we have Disney Dreamlight Valley with Tiana and Tiana's Palace added. alongside Vampire Survivors Plus. I've heard so many good things about this game from friends that are really into video games, and I've promised them that I'm going to revisit and check this out. I have not yet, but when I do, I'll be able to check out, alongside the main story, a new stage called Room 1665 and a new challenge mode as well. And lastly, A Slight Chance of Saw Blades, which is a title that gets me squeamish, has added an International Dog Day celebration with a new canine character and dog-themed background. Quick question, how did you celebrate International Dog Day with your little pal?
I have to admit, I neglected to get her an International Dog Day gift, so this is my reminder. I need to go out and pick up a pup cake for her, and those are great because they're like full of like peanut butter and all this kind of stuff that dogs love, but they can have, and nice little treat for her. So I'll have to go do that. Thanks for the reminder, Sigmund.
It's okay. Friday is the big day for Apple Originals, or at least, originally it was the day that everything was released. But Friday this week sees the premiere of K-pop Idols, which sees glitz meet grit in a backstage pass to artists from around the world through both the trials and triumphs, and really gives you an insight into the performers and how they give everything they've got to an art form that demands nothing less than perfection. Couple of points after watching the first couple of episodes of this 6-episode mini limited series. We get to learn about K-pop's inception and its global appeal, the introduction to the people and artists that the documentary series follows, alongside what is a celebration of K-pop and not an expose, which is something we've seen a lot of recently. So it's nice to see an art form celebrated in the way that we've seen country celebrated just last year. That said, one thing I was kind of surprised by was how there was a lot of focus on the marketing and the social media elements of K-pop, with the music kind of coming in a distant second. Not a lot of behind the scenes on, songwriting and that kind of thing, which is what I thought was going to be the basis of this. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think for fans of K-pop and for fans of these artists and their various different backgrounds as well, this is a great little limited series that is definitely going to find an audience, especially among the super Lee Min-ho fans following the season 2 premiere of Pachinko. So great timing for this series. Definitely an acquired taste. But yeah, it's available across all of your screens on Friday.
Speaking of Pachinko, there's a new episode this Friday to check out as well. Alongside Friday Night Baseball, which sees the San Diego Padres play at Tampa Bay Rays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, as well as the Seattle Mariners at Los Angeles Angels at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Saturday, we see the return of regular MLS season play on MLS Season Pass after the League's Cup. Congratulations to Columbus for taking home the prize there. In terms of extras this week, we've got some fun ones. The morning show, Corey's top 5 monologues. Corey's a character I can't get enough of, so I love these clips from the morning show. From the instigators, we've got Matt Damon and Casey Affleck have a Boston debate. We got to have a new Boston extra every week, Sigmund. At least that's what it seems like for now. Finally, for Time Bandits, Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement travel through time and tell their origin stories. A little something for everyone in our extras this week.
Very, very cool. And that actually brings us to this week's recaps with a few spoiler-free thoughts first on the hopefully first of many seasons for Time Bandits, which was a perfect reimagining of the much-loved classic adventure film that saw an 11-year-old history buff named Kevin and a ragtag group of thieves work together to save the boy's parents and the world. If you've yet to see this show, and I'm not sure how deep into this you got, Devon, but maybe you've been put off because it's been promoted heavily in the kids and family area of the Apple TV Plus tab within the TV app, and What I would say is ignore it at your peril. I had such a blast watching this series thanks to its charm and at times some hidden, darkly wicked humour, which had me laughing as an adult and had some younger family members laughing along with me as well. It's just a really, really fun, humorous ride. This, of course, was created for television by Jermaine Clement, Ian Morris, and Taika Waititi, starring Lisa Kudrow, Taika Waititi, and Jermaine Clement, and headline stars in the making: Kal-El Tuck, who plays Kevin, and Kira Thompson, who plays his elder sister. What I will say about this show is that I was really surprised by, first off, the visual effects, which really hold up, really top-notch stuff, but also the audio mixing. I think one of the best audio mixes in streaming this year, really out of this world. This is a series that comes highly, highly recommended, with the first season now streaming in full across all of your screens, but a series we weren't able to cover initially due to scheduling and a last-minute embargo in a packed lineup of Apple originals over the summer is the impeccable limited series Lady in the Lake. Spoilers are ahead on this discussion, so if you've yet to watch, please don't spoil it for yourselves. Skip ahead to the next chapter of this episode and we'll see you when you're ready. Now, when the disappearance of a young girl grips the city of Baltimore in 1966, the lives of two women converge on a fatal collision course.
How did you know?
Know what?
Where to find her?
I saw you once, Maddie Schwartz. Before any of this began, I saw you.
This is not your high school newspaper, Maddie. People's lives are at stake.
Alive, I was Cleo Johnson. But in my death, I became the lady in the lake.
Lady in the Lake is created and directed by the visionary Alma Harrell and based on the novel by Laura Lippman. This series stars Natalie Portman as Madeline Schwartz and Moses Ingram as Cleo Johnson. But Devon, can you give us some more background on this leading pair?
For sure, and what a pair they are. Madeline is an upper-class Jewish housewife and mother who's deeply affected by the disappearance of Tessie Durst, a child from her community, and this leads her to leave her husband to pursue a career in her long-lost love of journalism. Cleo, meanwhile, is a black mother of two boys who is separated from her husband and trying to make ends meet on her own, working as a dress model at a department store and as a bookkeeper for a local club owner/crime boss. She tries to get a job working for a politician whom she admires, but is turned away, which leads her deeper into the world of professional crime and eventually into a very dangerous situation, as we see play out throughout the series. Eventually, Cleo's body is discovered in a lake, and when it is, Madeline takes it upon herself to solve the crime, even though it's very clear that no one wants her involved. Her paper editors tell her to stay away. Cleo's family tells her to stay away. No one wants Madeline involved here, but she just goes deeper and deeper into this story. Now, the series is narrated by Cleo, who offers her opinion on Madeline's tactics and motives while investigating her death. Another person who doesn't want Madeline involved is Cleo through her narration. So the story's following Madeline primarily, but it is told from Cleo's point of view, which I think is a really interesting kind of approach to this story.
How does the approach of having two leads and two different perspectives on the events play out on screen throughout this series?
I think having them both take center stage, it really highlights the vast differences in these women's socioeconomic status and how that impacts the way that they experience the world. Madeline is rash, impulsive, and headstrong. She's letting out a lot of things that she's kept pent up for many, many years, and you can see that all over Natalie Portman's face throughout this series and the expressions that she's making, and I think she does an excellent job with just kind of that release of all that energy and all those things that she hasn't said for so long. But the thing about Madeline is she continues to succeed and win people over no matter how many mistakes she makes. And you see at every turn, she's doing these things that I'm like, I don't know that I would make that decision necessarily. But no matter what situation she finds herself in, she always comes out on top. And I think that's really interesting in comparison to Cleo, who's trying to do the right things for her sons and even make the world better for others, but the door is closed on her every step of the way, whereas it seems to be opened for Madeline. She's given no real option other than to go down this dangerous path that eventually puts a target on her back due to no wrong on her part. She's given very few options, and none of them are good ones. And I think that's kind of part of the tragedy of the show, is watching Cleo, this person that we really want to see succeed and has these great motivations, including, of course, taking care of her children. And you just see her kind of being put in these situations beyond her control and not really given any way out until eventually, of course, we find out she is the lady in the lake, as sad as that is. So it's just a really interesting dual approach here of these two women who lives interconnect in these different ways, but the different places that they're coming from affect the way that people react to them and where they end up.
And that's such a strong part of this story, but also I think just as strong a part of bringing this story to life and on screen. It's just the style and the stylized way in which this story is told. Mm-hmm. I said visionary. Alma Harrell, I haven't actually heard of this talent before, so I need to kind of look back and go through her works. But the thing that I think is really interesting about this is how the series, as it progresses, we get to see more of these two women's worlds that are, portrayed in vastly different ways. Not only in Baltimore, but you also see the people around them and how they help build the world of Lady in the Lake.
Yeah, and that's another way I think that the series portrays these two women so differently. Cleo's world goes from big to small. She starts off with these ambitions to help a political campaign that she believes in. She's trying to support her two sons, including Teddy, who's being pulled himself into that world of organized crime, as we see, and she's trying to protect him from that. And then there's Lionel, who suffers from sickle cell anemia, and so she's trying to deal with his health situation in addition to just his everyday needs. Eventually, she becomes trapped at this Pharaoh club, working for Shell Gordon, who's had a hold on her family for a generation now. We get into the story of how her father was also involved with this club and Shell and the impact that had on his family. She gets sent unknowingly by Gordon's protege, Reggie, on an assassination attempt gone wrong that puts her life in danger. And so the world of Cleo just contracts and contracts and contracts until it's just this one building where she's being told by people what to do, and she eventually gets told to do something that she doesn't understand what she's doing, but she ends up just really, really going down a path that puts her in a really bad situation. Meanwhile, Madeline's world goes from small to big. She moves from an isolation in a home dominated by a neglectful husband and a son who resents her for reasons that do become clear, I think, throughout the series, to her own place in Cleo's neck of the woods, where she's free to pursue a new romantic relationship with Ferdy and her ambitions as a writer at the Baltimore Sun. But of course, for both characters, all roads do eventually lead back to the Pharaoh, where worlds collide as Madeline realizes that Reggie, the guy who works for Shell, could be the connection between Tessie Durst's case and Cleo Johnson. So that's where the worlds converge, which is interesting to see. But I think what interests me most is just the way that Madeline moves throughout the world, and her world expands, and she's kind of on the up and up, whereas Cleo's world is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking throughout the series.
Well said, well explained. But I think it's time for us to talk spoilers, right? Because the big twist at the end of the penultimate episode is that Cleo Johnson is actually alive and not dead, as we're kind of forced to believe throughout. Were you expecting that reveal? And what did you think of it?
Oh, I was completely shocked by that reveal. And I think, honestly, my brain just rejected it at first, because that entire episode, Madeline's in the hospital, she's on pain medicine, and she's kind of seeing things that are and aren't there, and having these kind of hallucinations. So the question is that Cleo or not? In the week between watching that episode and the finale, I came to the conclusion, okay, you know what? This actually has to be Cleo. That would be a terrible thing to fake people out on, right? And it actually explains how she's narrating the story and how it's all told from her perspective as well. So I think it was a really great reveal, and one that changed the entire tone of the series for me. It made Cleo this even more powerful character, someone that I respected even more than I did already for the things that she's been through, But to go through those things and then come out on top, I mean, so much respect. She took a terrible situation and made it one that worked out for her family's benefit. And in the meantime, she even gave Madeline a career boost kind of in exchange for her keeping that secret, which I think not only shows power on her part, but also just how smart she is in figuring how to make it work out for everybody. I love the happy ending for Cleo, where she gets to go to Paris under her friend Dora's name, eventually even gets to reunite with Slappy, and she ends the series singing about her freedom. That, again, we've seen her lose that freedom throughout the series, and then at the end, she takes it all back in this really amazing way. And so, I found that so enjoyable and inspiring. And again, it just took the show from one that I found so sad and, just kind of depressing, though enjoyable, to one that I actually found inspiring and a show that, again, it left me with so much respect for Cleo and what she did. Now, for Madeline, it's more of a mixed ending. She has professional success, but she has that at a personal cost, right? But I think that ultimately that is the decision that she wanted to make. That was the desire that she had at the beginning of the show when she decides to go out on her own and pursue this career. And so, again, it's a little bit bittersweet on her end, and she's a character that, again, I question some of the decisions she makes, and so seeing her with a little bit more of a mixed ending, I think, is fitting. But again, Cleo kind of comes in and helps her out as well, and you see her become this author. And so, I thought it was a great ending. That twist really set us up for an awesome finale, and the way they wrapped up the story, I don't think they could have done a better job with it. It was awesome.
I mean, I only finished this series last night, right, in preparation for this conversation. And the thing that I kept thinking throughout watching was how much I felt, maybe not tonally, but I felt like there was a lot that was in relation to what we saw in Lessons in Chemistry. And that series, of course, saw so many accolades and recognitions. I really hope that Lady in the Lake will be treated the same. I guess my question is, being very different, and I don't mean to pit two series against one another, but I know how much you loved Lessons in Chemistry. Was this as enjoyable for you? Because I'll be honest, tonally, and just some of the visuals, some of the kind of shocking twists here, there's a few that were kind of spoiled in the trailer for me, but there's so many. And also, just to say, the intro for each episode, right, the opening sequence is dazzling. Mm-hmm. If you were to compare this to Lessons in Chemistry.
Well, I don't think any show has quite captured me like Lessons in Chemistry did yet. It just something about that show just connected to me on such a deep level. This one, I'll say, I enjoyed a lot. I can definitely see the comparisons there, and I hope that it enjoys as much success as Lessons in Chemistry has so far. But for me, I think that final twist at the end is what really made it for me, whereas Lessons in Chemistry, it was surprising me all along the way in ways that delighted me. So I guess maybe all of the delight came at the end for me on this one in terms of just of the plot. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's up there quite with Lessons in Chemistry, but it's definitely close, and I can see why that comparison is made and why someone might prefer this one over the other, especially, as you said, with all the technical sides of things that go into this one as well. But overall, I did enjoy the series quite a bit. I'd say it was well structured and really well paced, with two powerful leading performances, a mystery I was genuinely shocked by, and a conclusive ending that I was happy with. I think it's definitely earned its place among the Apple Originals fold, and it's one that I think will endure in the library and be worth revisiting in the future for sure.
Well, you can now stream Lady in the Lake in full across all of your screens on Apple TV+. Yeah, definitely one I will be revisiting at some point down the line, and we encourage you to do the same. Of course, each week we talk about our up next picks, but before that, some TV app highlights. Because this is a crazy week for TV app highlights, Devon, so I'm going to go as quick as I can. Now available to stream, Longlegs, which had a surprise early PVOD release last Friday, which I stopped myself from watching as it was only available in HD. I am, of course, a 4K HDR snob. On Tuesday, they flicked the switch for 4K HDR10+, so I'm now all in on this scary Nick Cage thriller, which I missed in the theatres. Then we also have Adam Sandler, Love You, on Netflix, which is a hilarious and heartfelt stand-up set directed by Josh Safdie. The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power Season 2. The first season I couldn't complete. I just kind of lost interest, but it's coming to Prime Video, and they spent a lot of money on it, so they're hoping you'll watch it. Sasquatch Sunset, which was a previous Up Next pick of mine, is coming alongside A Quiet Place Day 1 to Paramount Plus, Showtime. And finally, available now, the streaming debut of Kinds of Kindness. This is a surrealist outing of connecting stories from Yorgos Lanthimos, starring Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, and William Dafoe. It's not the one that I've checked out yet. It is available on PVOD now, and to stream on Hulu on Friday. So not too long to wait at all. On Thursday, we see on Peacock, Gary. This is a new documentary on Gary Coleman's life and mysterious death, one that I've definitely bookmarked to check out. And on Friday, a number of cool different films. The first being Borderlands, which is coming to PVOD. This is an adaptation of the popular video game series, which I haven't played. I don't know if you have, Devon.
I can't say I have.
Okay, well, neither of us have played, but I hear is very, very popular. This adaptation's from director Eli Roth, and it stars Cate Blanchett as Lilith, Kevin Hart as Roland, and Jack Black as Claptrap, alongside Jamie Lee Curtis as Dr. Tannis. Now, I've not heard good things about this adaptation, but with the cast, and I like Eli Roth as a director, this is something that I think I'm going to check out, even though I have no experience of the game. So we have that. Also coming to streaming on Friday is The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling and Emma Blunt, another Up Next pick of mine. This is coming to Peacock. And then on Netflix, The Deliverance, which is a story about a struggling single mother fighting her personal demons. And she moves her family into a new home for a fresh start, but then strange occurrences inside the home raise the suspicions of Child Protective Services and threaten to tear the family apart, leading to a battle for her life and the souls of her children. It's inspired by a true story and directed by Academy Award nominee Lee Daniels, best known for his feature Precious. It stars Andra Day, Glenn Close, Anjanua Ellis-Taylor, and Monique on what is being described as a genre-defying take on darkness and possession. And finally, when it comes to TV app highlights, we see The Watchers on Max. This is from Ishana Night Shyamalan, the feature directorial debut, of course, the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan, and really the first that I've seen of her being involved in films since her involvement with Apple original series Servant. This is a supernatural horror film based on the 2022 novel of the same name, self-financed by Ashana's father and sold to Warner Brothers for $30 million. That deal, of course, helped the studio lure M. Night Shyamalan away from his long-term deal with Universal, with his first film from that deal also coming into PVOD on Friday. And that is my Up Next pick for this week. It's called Trap. And I saw this mere weeks ago at my local theatre. It follows Cooper, played by Josh Hartnett, as he takes his daughter Riley to a concert, which is, of course, performed by Salem Night Shyamalan, another one of M. Night Shyamalan's daughters. There's just one thing, and it's in the trailer, so not really a spoiler. Cooper, played by Josh Hartnett, is a serial killer. And unbeknown to him, he's just been caught in a trap to capture him, led by Dr. Grant, played by Hayley Mills, the star of the original Parent Trap. So, funny, leave your brain at the door, daft entertainment. and a chilling and memorable turn for Josh Hartnett in the closing acts of this film. Shockingly, and I think this is going to be a surprise to you, this is another film kind of slightly based on true events. This is based partially on a real-life sting operation that was jointly organised by the United States Marshals Service and the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. that resulted in the arrest of 101 wanted fugitives on December 15th, 1985. And how they did it, it wasn't a concert from M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, but instead the fugitives voluntarily went to the Washington Convention Center, responding to an invite sent by a fictitious television company to claim 2 free tickets to watch the Washington Redskins American football home game against the Cincinnati Bengals, and for a chance to win tickets to Super Bowl 20. Yeah. Now, beyond that, Devon, I've been listening to our friends at 9 to 5 Mac Happy Hour and our colleagues at App Stories, with both shows hitting episode milestones this past week. So massive congratulations to friends Chance and Benjamin on 500, and to our colleagues John and Federico on 400. I've also been spinning my For All Mankind Volume 1 soundtrack of the first 3 seasons, alongside, as I stated at the top of this episode, lots of Oasis, as I wind myself up before ultimately, probably, being disappointed when all tickets for their comeback tour sell out in seconds. And, you know, this week, Devon, on social media, upon the announcement of the comeback, Neely Ann, our colleague at Mac Stories, and others have reminded me how old I am this week. So bring us up to date with something a little more contemporary, will you, Devon?
I'd be happy to. For my up next picks this week, I've got 2 things that you can listen to. The first being the new album from Post Malone, F1 Trillion. It's a country album. He's crossing over, and I have not listened to much Post Malone in the past. He's not someone that I would necessarily go to when I pull up the Apple Music app to check out new music, but I heard so many good things about this album that I just had to listen to it, and I've now listened to it like 4 times, I think, and I just talk about it to everyone that I meet. I just tell them to listen to F1 Trillion because I'm so into this album. It's really, really good. I feel like it would be so easy for an artist like Post Malone to decide to do a country album and think he knows what that means.
Oh, sure.
And then make something that could be offensive or come off as a parody, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And rather than doing that, he's really immersed himself in the culture of country music. He's teamed up with superstars like Dolly Parton to create this album. And it really is, it's an awesome set of tracks. And as someone who grew up listening to country and kind of fell away from it, I appreciate good country music. A lot of what's happening in country music now just doesn't really appeal to me. But this album, I think it gets at what country is, and Post Malone is really showing off his artistry here by being able to take on a genre that so many people love and is not in his repertoire necessarily, and just kind of knock it out of the park. So this album is worth checking out. It is very country. If that's not your thing, then, you know, if you're not a country music fan, then it's probably not going to appeal to you. But if you like country at all, I think this is going to be one to check out. There's some like true country romps on here, just like really goofy, fun songs that are, you know, you just listen to because they're silly. There's some pretty heartfelt ones on here as well. There's a song in particular about his daughter that made me well up with tears as a new father. You know, I think I'm right in that prime spot to be hit by something like that, but I really enjoyed it. My favorite track is called Nosedive. It's a slower, quieter one that really shows off his singing chops and one that I enjoy a lot. So F1 Trillion, that's my recommendation, Sigmund. It's a country album, not something that I've ever brought before, but one I really enjoyed.
Very cool. It's actually the second time Post Malone's been an Up Next pick, because last year he had an album and I made it my Up Next pick. It's the first music artist to do it twice. I will say, you know, he really does adapt well to different genres. He's just a lover of music. I think that's quite clear. Of course, he broke out, you know, with his hip-hop output. But I remember during COVID, he did a charity stream where he did like Nirvana covers. and I still go back to that stream and listen because it's crazy. Drums by Travis Barker and everyone else. A lot more angsty than, the country stuff. But, we are in a political climate where you probably need to let out a little bit of angst.
Yeah, and speaking of that, if you're looking for an outlet for some of that political energy that you have, I've got a podcast recommendation for you. This one, you can listen to it in Apple Podcasts. You can also watch it on YouTube. It's The Weekly Show with Jon Stewart. If you enjoyed The Problem with Jon Stewart, which I very much did, this is very, very similar to that. I actually missed the podcast more than the show. To be honest, I love the conversations he was having on the podcast. And this is very much in that similar vein. He's doing interviews. He's goofing off with his team. And it's really focused on the election right now, because that's all anybody can really talk about. And he's got some really good insights there. But if you're missing The Problem with Jon Stewart, this is, I think, its spiritual successor and a new podcast that I've really been enjoying.
Very, very cool. And something I noticed also, because I've been listening to it, is, he's not afraid to talk to people from like the kind of, I guess, the other side of the spectrum when it comes to, political leanings. Very, very cool. Great pick. And that is where we end yet another hour plus, nearly 2 hours of Apple TV conversation. A great conversation this week, Devon. Until next week, where can people contact us?
Well, we'll leave our social media links down in the show notes, or you can email the show or send us an iMessage to magic@macstories.net. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with the season 4 return of Slow Horses and more. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.